Hello, thanks all for being here tonight. We are very lucky to have Dewey Sutherland and Kazu Kiyobishi with us tonight, both of whom have written wildly popular, incredibly, best-selling series for young readers. And we're going to ask them a little bit about their experience writing for young readers and writing in the series form. And I can't imagine two better people to have with us to talk about this topic. I see young people here that I saw earlier today. They've been here all day and hitting every single panel that both of these people were giving today. And so I'm very excited to have the opportunity to talk to them and to have them tell you a little bit about their experience with the Amulet series and the Wings of Fire series, both best-selling series, incredibly popular series. I wasn't even aware of how popular these series really are until really this festival, and just seeing how many students, how many young people so excited about what you offer. And it warms my heart that you are both so generous and charitable with their questions and with their attention. So it's very exciting for me to be a part of this as well. So to start us off, I hope that, and later this evening, we will have a Q&A. And so please, if you have questions, save those for later. We will have at least 20 minutes to answer questions from all of you. But to start us off, I was hoping you would tell us a little bit about the Amulet and Wings of Fire series, just especially for those of us in the audience who have not read the series at all or all the way through.
So I'm Dewey Sutherland, the author of the Wings of Fire series, and it's a series where the heroes are all dragons. So it has a lot of the trappings of epic fantasy, but where in most epic fantasy books you find the dragons are the villains or the sidekicks or sometimes the transportation, they never get to be the heroes. And I wanted a whole series where the dragons get to have all the adventures and fall in love and also be the bad guys, but so they're everything. And so there are humans in this world, but mostly they just get eaten a lot. That's how the dragons see them. They're like, delicious snacks, fantastic. So it starts with 5 books about these little dragons who are told they're in a prophecy and they have to stop the war between the dragon tribes and save the world. And then it takes some of the tropes of epic fantasy and hopefully kind of flips them upside down. And it's funny, hopefully. And then it goes on. Right now there's 13 books out in the series, plus a standalone that's connected. And then there's another standalone coming in March and 2 more in the series for sure. So just continuing the adventures of various dragons in this world.
The Amulet series is it's a graphic novel series, so I draw the pictures as well as write the words. And it's a story about these 2 kids who have lost their father in a tragic car accident. It's the opening scene of the Amulet series. And their mom moves them out into the countryside where they have this old ancestral home that they've inherited from their great-grandpa who's disappeared. And he was a robot maker. Nobody knows where he went. And so, of course, something happens in the house where their mom is kidnapped by unseen forces and taken into this fantasy world where the kids have to decide to jump in and essentially go on this big rescue mission. And on this rescue mission, they learn all sorts of things about leadership and about taking care of others, and essentially become the parents that they kind of always were, because they had to step in to fulfill those roles. And a lot of it is actually a response to things that actually happened in my life. I've had my brother and I had to step in and essentially be my parents since we were basically teenagers. And so I wanted to write about that emotion, but in a very accessible fantasy setting. And while I did that, I also wanted to make it a lot of fun, and I wanted it to be a big grand adventure in the ways that Star Wars movies are, or the movies of Hayao Miyazaki. Can light up the imagination, and I wanted to do something in that tradition.
I think it's so interesting that you talk about the parenting part of it, because I started writing Wings of Fire like right when I had kids, and I feel like it's secretly all about parenting. Like, don't tell the kids.
I mean,
because it's a secret.
is it even possible for it not to be when you are a parent?
Right, and it's like what I'm thinking about all the time. And like,
Yeah.
I feel like crafting characters and raising children are fairly similar in some ways. The characters are slightly more agreeable about what I want them to do.
Yeah, and like actually, when I started Amulet, I signed up to work on it in 2005, and this is before I was married and I had children, and I was frightened of the idea of writing for kids at the time, and I had to really think about what it was like for me when I was younger. Now that I have kids who are the age of the readers, the ages of the readers of my books, that part of it, the writer part of it, the writer responsibility part of it, has been a lot easier to assume. Because I'm a dad, so I know what that means. It's just like if my readers are angry, they're probably just hungry. You gotta make sure somebody feed the readers, and they gotta get some sleep. They get some sleep, or they can't get everything they want. As a writer, like, hey, can this happen? And I was like, no, it can't happen in the story. I'm not gonna, because it shouldn't.
Oh, you're probably a better dad than I am. I'm like, sure, have all the things. Yes, I will give you a Kinkajou book, no problem. Because I love them so much, all the kids who are readers. But yeah, I think that I feel like I'm working out all my parenting worries by like making different terrible dragon parents. I'm like, well, at least they're not that bad. Over and over again, and trying to sort of work towards like what's a better family. Do you feel like any differently about that opening scene now that you're a dad?
Yeah, I was worried about that. So I went back. I always go back to read all my older books. And before I do, I sort of close my eyes and go, oh man, I hope I did this all right. I hope I did it right. And I sit down and I read it. And I just recently read Amulet 1, and I thought, yeah, all right. It's not bad. It's like a B. I give it a B. And he did all right, The little guy, the little me, 10, 15 years ago, he was a little bit, wiser than I expected him to be. So it was really cool to see that. I'm not embarrassed, I guess.
I mean, I feel like you really capture that feeling of like all of them, even the mom. I really feel like you understand how she's feeling, and that you were like didn't have kids of your own at that point. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, but my brother and I had to take care of my mom, and that was what I was channeling, and that feels real because the character in the book is basically my mom.
Because she doesn't have very much agency compared to the younger kids. Like, they are really driving the story, and she's just there to be like, I think this is a bad idea.
Yeah. And that's how it is like in real life. Because my brother and I are my parents' caretakers.
My mom always wants to know which character she is in the books, and I won't tell her. Although I did put a character in, I think it's book 12, who has some of her characteristics. It's this like grouchy old highway called Scarab, who shows up when it shows like the queen. She's the queen's mother, or no, she's not a queen, but she's like the ruler of her hive. And every time she shows up, the lady of the hive is trying to be all like, I'm the boss here, and the mother comes in and is like, you should move that side table. It's in the wrong place. I've been embarrasses the heck out of her. She's like, Mom, I'm trying to be like in charge here.
Does she know?
Yes, but that one she knows about. Yeah, once she read it, she was like, wait, this seems familiar.
There's actually a dragon character in Amulet that's based on my son.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, the little one.
I named him after his first word. And it wasn't a word, he just kept saying Dagno all the time. So there's a character named Dagno. That's why that's his name. And I was giving a presentation in front of his class. And I was like, my son is the inspiration for this little dragon character. His name is Dagno, because he kept saying Dagno all the time. He's like, Dagno. And my son, raised his hand, and he was like, Daddy, I was trying to say Daddy. I almost burst into tears. I had to get it together to continue talking to his friends so I don't embarrass him.
Totally.
Yeah.
I actually based one of the little dragons on my son too, so I started writing book one like right after I had my first son, who's now 9 years old, and I was very much thinking of that main character, Clay, in the first book, as the dragon who is going to end up being the big brother, and he has to take care of all of his other siblings. And I sort of made him everything I wanted Jonah to be, and I totally think Jonah is. He's perfect. but then Elliot came along, and I was like, I need to make an Elliot character, but Elliot is such a big personality that it's really hard to capture him in like one character, and especially when he was little. I was like, how do I make someone as gigantic as like 3-year-old Elliot? And so for those of you who've read book 8, it's Cliff, the little dragon who shows up and is immediately like, I should be the star of this book. I should be the star of everything. I also have written many songs. Would you like to hear them? So, so that was really fun, trying to like infuse his voice into those characters.
I love that you were talking about parenting in both cases, and I wonder, earlier today you mentioned that you were talking about different parenting styles in the different, the original group of dragonettes, and they end up going and meeting their parents. And can you repeat that? I think that was very interesting about the different parenting styles that you were thinking through.
I don't quite remember what I said, but I do know that I was, because I was, kind of testing out different parenting styles on my kids. There's like the helicopter parent, that's Cora in book 2, who literally has her child tied to her at all times, which is kind of what I wanted to do with my children, I will admit. And so, wrestling with like the main characters are the ones who are like, no, thank you, I prefer not to be tied to my mother. And I was like, but wouldn't it be nice just for a little while? The Ice Wings are more like the Tiger Mother, and sort of the like, we're very strict and we're going to make sure that you do, like, you're going to follow the rules, and that sort of extends out into their whole society. I think those are the ones that are like the most specific, but then also just there are some of the absentee moms that are the ones who like really want to be there but aren't quite doing it right. I mean, not that anyone's doing it exactly right, but that means I think we're all doing it fine. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's hard to pick out like the best mom in the book. They're all very complicated, but I love writing them. I love just thinking about that stuff.
Sure. And earlier you mentioned too how parenting, I don't want to say gets in the way of your books, but certainly slows down your writing.
Well, I mean, I think the way to put it is that I slow down my writing to be a parent.
Right.
And it's not so much that it gets in the way or anything like that. It really doesn't. It's just that I actually chose this career partly because I wanted to have a family. I used to work in animation, and I would have been directing features had I stayed on that path. And I feel like when I'm on a film set, I see my crew as my family, so I don't want to have to make that choice. And so lately, part of it is that I feel like I've stopped moving as quickly as I used to with my productions, partly so that I can help set a good, healthy pace for other artists who are coming up behind me. That's one, but also for myself. And as we move forward, and I end up having a lot more time with my family, and those positive feelings actually go in the book and make those books better. And so it's just a good investment of time. So I don't worry so much about deadlines and things like that anymore. I just kind of go with the pace of how things are moving, and I usually listen to my kids to see if I'm pacing things correctly.
So interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think my kids would still wish I would spend more time with them, but I feel like I'm seeing them all the time, so I'm not sure how I could do that.
Well, that's good. I mean, I just enjoyed that both of you today mentioned parenting.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. Sorry. That I don't see that. Yeah, I agree. I don't see them as obstacles.
That's pretty unique.
Yeah, because I feel like my writing got a lot better after I became a parent. Like I sort of realized what I wanted to say. Like my voice became clearer, and I was like, well, what do I want them to be like? What do I want other children to get out of this? So I think that it's been. I mean, as much as that's all I do is writing and parenting. I don't do anything else, but I feel like it's worth it for both of those things.
That's true. It's also helped me deal with criticism very well. Like, because I I just don't listen to it anymore. The criticism, well, I'll listen to what people have to say that they're critical about something, but I don't know. I feel like when you're taking care of other people, you're having to be a lot more proactive rather than reactionary, and you have to keep putting your foot forward instead of being on your heels. And so so now like I don't when the book goes out and it's read, I'll listen to the readers if they come talk to me, but I won't see what a critical analysis there might be, partly because I don't want to be on my heels, my back foot. I think that people like it. That's what I don't know, but and so it's but I mean I also expect that the more challenging the process, the actual writing is, the better I get at my craft. I have a feeling that the critical reviews will actually come down because they won't understand it. So that's another thing. I also read criticism differently than a lot of my friends. I have a degree in film criticism. That's what I studied. And so I knew that if you want to make Citizen Kane, half the people are going to hate you for doing it. If you want to make Blade Runner, then no one's going to see it and everyone's going to hate it. And I don't know if I'm good enough to do those yet. And I think of that challenge of when that day might come. Yeah.
That's funny. I thought you were going to say you're better at taking criticism because my children criticize me a lot. I mean, they're really delightful. They're the best kids in the world. But their funniest joke right now is how old I am. They're like, "Mom, you're so ancient." Every time I bring up something like Abraham Lincoln, they're like, "So that was like 2,000 years after you were born?" I'm like, "Mom, my children, what are you doing to me?" And also, they have not read my books. So, I'm like, okay, this is all fine. You'll be hearing from my therapist later.
Don't be reading the books soon.
So you both mentioned that you were writing the series as an early parent, as a new parent, and you started the series before your children. But both of you imagined, I assume, that the series would be read by children. You were imagining this as a children's or a young readers. Did you? And you both imagined, I think. Tell me more about them as series. How did you plan these books as a series? How strategic are you? How you hear these stories, J.K. Rowling, plotted out the whole series and in scraps of paper, and I just wondered how strategic were you with the series?
So I didn't plan a series. No, I thought it was going to be one book. It was a practice run because I had never made a graphic novel before. I made a book called Daisy Cutter, but it's a collection of comics that was formed into a graphic novel and garnered acclaim. People seemed to like it, but I actually didn't create it all at once as one book. Amulet, the Stonekeeper, the first one, is actually my very first graphic novel, and it was incredibly challenging. I just wanted to know what the process would be like to do a book-length comic. That's a tremendous amount of information that you have to compile and put into this tiny little box, and I was having a really hard time doing it. I pitched Scholastic a single book that was 300 pages, and they asked me to split it in two. And so that's how that happened. It became two books. And as we were getting close to the end of the second book, David Saylor at Scholastic said, "I think this is going to go longer than two." But he's my Dumbledore. He's actually he's incredible. I can talk all day about David Saylor, one of the smartest people I've ever met. And he said, "I think it's going to go longer." And I was getting towards the end, and I'm frazzled. I'm like, "I think you're right, David. I think this is going to be a little bit longer. Let's go 5. Let's do 5." And then as I was getting towards the end of 5, I talked to David, and he was like, "It's not going to end it right now." I was like, "I don't think I can do that. Let's add 2 more. It's going to go to 7." And as I was getting close to 7, I was like, "Oh my goodness, there's no way." There's no way. But I don't want it to go too far. I want it to be about the same length as Bone, and about the same length of Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind by Hayao Miyazaki, because after I'm gone, I would like all 3 of those sitting on the shelf together and hanging out, And I don't want to push them off the shelf. And so I said, 9's going to be it, David. We're going to go to 9, but I didn't realize how hard it would be to try to finish everything. And so I decided then that I would begin the ending of Amulet at number 7. And that's what I did. So 7, 8, and 9 are actually one book. And that's the finale of the series. But that's the way I ended up having to plan it. However, I did always believe that the ending would be the same, and it hasn't changed at all. I actually sent it, and Scholastic didn't seem to believe me, so I sent it to them. And they're like, oh yeah, it makes sense. Oh yeah, it's not really a thread that I'm making. I'm actually creating a loop, and it's gonna close at some point, and I just got to get it to just the right spot, and I'm almost there. So
it's so interesting because I love them, and when it suddenly went from fantasy to science fiction, and it was just such a cool, like, oh my gosh, suddenly they're on a spaceship, and there's an alien thing happening. But you always knew that it had that science fiction thing happening in the background?
You can actually ask my assistant, because he thought it was nuts. Because I said, just by the way, we were starting to work on Amulet 2, and I said, just by the way, I'm setting it up because we're going to have robot battles in space. And he's like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah, so like Amulet 2, we got to have Naven start piloting this thing because he's got to learn with this like kind of rickety old house. He's going to learn how to pilot a giant mechanical robot, And so he was like, okay, I don't know. And he was working on it like 2 years ago, and he just thought, it's happening.
finally the
it's
robot
actually happening. He's like, yeah. But of course, I could always control the trajectory of it.
Wow, that's so interesting. So with Wings of Fire, it started off, the plan was 5 books. And so I had worked on a lot of other series before, sometimes as an editor, a little bit as a writer. So I have that brain. Like I like thinking about entire worlds and like staying in that world and playing with it for a while longer. And I also really love stories where you get one person's perspective and then you get someone else's perspective where you get to see them through the other one's eyes. Because I think that's the whole point of stories, is like creating empathy and like understanding what everyone is thinking, that everyone has their own story going on inside. So that's been the most fun thing I think about writing Wings of Fire is switching the main character from book to book and being like, oh, that's what Sunny was really thinking when she made all those faces in book 2. and getting to sort of explore the same themes, but with different character perspectives on them. So the plan originally was I had a 5-book idea where I think I knew which character was going to have each book. I knew it would be like Clay, Tsunami, Glory, Starflight, and then Sunny. And I knew that it would start with the prophecy and it would end with sort of fulfilling the prophecy, but their own way. Like, I don't know how many spoilers to hand out, but I figured that it would, that sort of storyline would wrap up, that they would end the war, and that there would be twists along the way. There are things I didn't know. So I set it up in book 1 that there are these 3 queens that are vying for the throne. And I was like, let's make them equally terrible in different ways, because that way they can, no one will be able to guess which one of them is going to end up winning. And then I got to book 4 and I was like, oh my god, I don't want any of them to win. What do I do now? And so book 5 was a lot about trying to figure out, like, is there a way to solve this problem in my own way. And so that's one of the reasons I don't like planning too much ahead, because if I know what's going to happen, I think the reader's going to know, and I want to surprise people more than that. So I really like setting up problems for myself and then having to solve them. So in the next set of books, I created this love triangle where I was like, I'm going to make them all equally wonderful. And then by the end, I was like, I'm going to destroy some children. I'm so sorry. So sorry to the Winter fans, but there's hope for him yet, I think. So once we finished, sort of as I was writing books 4 and 5, we started talking about, like, is there more? Like, do I want to keep going with this series? And so then I had to sit down and think, like, well, what could happen next? Because I talked about this in my presentation today, but I think of them in sort of TV seasons, where like there's a big bad or there's a big like problem to overcome. And so in 5 books they do that, and then you kind of take a break and then you go into the next arc. But there's lots of continuing characters and storylines. So once I figured out 6 through 10, like what vaguely those would be, we signed up those. And that one was a little trickier because I wasn't sure who was going to get the last book. So between 9 and 10, I knew it would be either Turtle and then Kibbley, or Kibbley and then Turtle. And I wrestled with that for a while. And it came down to sort of the theme of like having powers and how to save the world. And I wanted it to end with the one who doesn't have powers saving the world anyway. And so that's why Kibbley got the last book. And then when we started talking about 11 through 15, I was like, we've been everywhere on this continent. We've seen all the things and met all the dragons. Let's make another continent. And then we can go there and meet some new tribes. So that was really fun. And that, again, sort of, I knew where it had to start, and I have an idea for the ending. But I prefer to sort of like spend a lot of time on the world building and the characters, and then I feel like what happens next feels natural, feels organic. So instead of having a whole plot worked out, it's like, well, this is what these characters would do. And I usually have like big things that I know are gonna throw everything off along the way. If that makes sense.
Well, the strategy involved is what really fascinates me. Not just with the plot, which you both spoke to, the world building, but even the battle scenes. I mean, there's so much you have to have plotted this out, these battle scenes, because you don't, but I like that you say you don't know until you're in the middle of it what new power emerges or what new character pops up. I wonder, what takes the most strategy? Is it world building? Is it plotting? Is it battle scenes? I also wonder, are you strategic in other elements of your lives? Or is it just with your writing?
My wife and I are both very strategic about everything. And so that's how it has been for me. You know, as a kid, my little brother is just a strategy genius. He's so good at games. I could never beat him at chess, and I'm good at chess. So I learned from him, my little brother. My little brother taught me all that. He's now he works in aerospace for Boeing. And he's a top level manager there. And with my life in general, that's the question, right? Yeah, I mean, it's with the kids, you have to be pretty strategic about your schedule. To me, I feel like the most valuable resource that anybody has is time. And so everything that I do, like, for example, when it comes down to, making the books, the things that I invest in are the things that save me time. So even when I had very little money, I invested in a large format scanner that scanned fast, so that the quality of it is increased, and I have a little bit more time back in my pocket. And so I'm constantly trying to find ways to get time back. And I feel like if I do that, then I'm probably also passing those savings on to my readers. And that's what I'm trying to do with the books, is I give them an epic reading experience like reading Lord of the Rings, but in a tiny fraction of the time that it takes to do it. The memory of Amulet is going to be just as big, but it will have only taken a few days as opposed to a few weeks. And those few weeks, they could do all sorts of things. And I think that that's a good deal. Does that make sense? So I'm very strategic about a lot of this stuff, and this is why I spend so much time making content that I can distill and not expand it, because I don't want to waste anybody's time. I'm trying to save them time.
It's fascinating. I'm not super good at organizing my time. I try, but I'm really good at puzzles, though. Really good at puzzles and games, and I'm super competitive. So, but I guess with with my characters, I'm more interested in like the emotional arcs and like what they're feeling, and so I'll go on for pages about their emotions. I have to cut it down a little bit. So I don't know if I would say there are things where I'm very organized, like about my things to do list, like most moms. Like I have a document that's like every day coming up, and like all the things I have to do, and then when I do it, I put a little smiley face next to it. And sometimes I just add things to the list so I can put more smiley faces on. So I'm like, I did do laundry, I'm gonna put that on there. And so I feel like that helps me sort of stay like on top of all the mom stuff. But in terms of the writing, like it's usually sort of the last 2 months before the deadline, where suddenly like I stopped doing laundry or cleaning the house, and I just write, and my poor husband has to take over everything else, because I know I'm sort of like in panic mode. But I think that works for me. I guess I feel like when I'm writing it all like that quickly, it's all in my head at once, and I don't lose the thread from the beginning to the end. I don't have to go back and reread things because I was just working on it like 3 hours ago before I went to bed. So I wish I was a little more strategic about time management. It's one of my goals.
Well, you give it to us in these series, so we benefit from where you're most strategic. Let's switch gears a little bit. I'm interested to know more about your fan base. I'm interested in hearing more. I mean, I saw today how young people responded to you. I'm also interested in how adults respond to your work. I know that adults and children sometimes have the same desires for a series and the same response, and then sometimes they don't. And I wonder, do you notice a difference between your adult readers and your child readers? What they want from you, how they respond?
I mean, I have a lot more child readers than adult readers. There's not a lot of adult readers who will commit to a 15-book series, and I'm totally understandable. Like, I don't read 15-book series either. So, but I love that kids are willing to do it, that they're like, I'm going to know everything about this world. I'm going to get really invested. I'm going to make up my own characters and dragons who live here. Like, that's what I want. That's my favorite thing about the readers of Wings of Fire, is that they all, can invest in the world in their own way. Like, there's a lot of artists who bring me drawings of dragons, which is my favorite thing. I love that. And then people who are creating their own characters and writing fan fiction. And I feel like that is one of the things that I'm trying to do with Wings of Fire, is create this world where everyone can come play. And it's like the way I switch perspectives from book to book is trying to say, like, everyone has a story. Everyone can save the world. You could too, write your own dragon who's off saving the world in a different way somewhere else. That's totally fine. Like, I love that. Because I want everyone to feel like that's their story, and like that they have something interesting and important to say. Did I get away from the question?
I liked it. So the adults, the children, in terms of the
Yeah, so that's usually the kids doing that. This is the wrong way to say this to you, but I'm not as interested in what the adults think. Because the kids are the best, and I love them. C.S. Lewis has this wonderful book on writing for children, where he talks about how when he was a kid, he was like, I'm going to be this like really literary, important writer. And so he was like, he would try to write stories where he was like, but nothing interesting can happen for the first like 20 pages, because that's how adult books work. And then he was like, wait, I don't want to write these anymore. And he kind of switched to writing for children. I feel like kid readers have all this like potential energy, and they're so like full of hope and it's my favorite thing, like talking to readers and seeing them like get excited about books, and I just feel like they're gonna save the world, like for real, in this generation of young readers. So I'm grateful to the parents who buy the books for them and who support them along the way. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, so I hear from a lot of parents and teachers and librarians that my books are often used to introduce reading to reluctant readers. It's not something I intended when I started. I suppose I was a reluctant reader when I was young, and I fell in love with literature later. I really think it's really a matter of finding the right book. For me, it was discovering that literature, classic literature, was simply entertainment from another day that was considered so important that we've kept it around. And if I could, contextualize like the era in which that thing was made, I can think about what it might have been like that was entertaining to me to like read something like my favorite book, Cannery Row, and I'd read that and think about what was happening in that time in history. And then reading this book, and if I can put myself in those shoes, then I feel like I'm learning a lot, and I really enjoyed that. With Amulet, as far as the readers go, I don't think all of the readers that I have are reluctant readers moving into reading, but the pictures and the words I write together, and I think that has something to do with allowing people to bridge an understanding of the concepts and the ideas that they're seeing. A lot of these kids are also, going back to the idea of having tough time management, they have a lot on their plate. So they really appreciate a story that gets to the core of the emotion and everything as quickly as possible. And as a filmmaker, as someone who was writing screenplays, you had to do that. You had to be really resourceful. You had to be really economical with your words and how you're going to use it. Every word could cost $1 million. Like a line could cost $1 million in the script. So you had to be really precise about how you went about putting stuff in the book. And so I think that the kids that are responding to it basically didn't have content that they felt matched the pace of the life they were living. And then so they found Amulet and decided, this is it. I'm gonna roll with this because this guy seems to understand. And my life was like that when I was a kid, so I can easily empathize with it because I'm just trying to remember what that was like. And so I sometimes feel like I'm just throwing these like life vests or like these little arm floaties into these kids and go, this isn't gonna save your life, but it might buy you some time, and maybe you can do something with that time. and build upon it. And that's the best thing I can possibly do, I think. The little I can, help with things to help put out a fire before it starts, maybe. So that's, I hear that. I've sat in signing lines, and a parent would come with their daughter or son, and they would cry, and we would just cry for minutes, during a signing, and I understand that it seems to, strike such a chord, so that interaction, I see that happening, and I guess the impact of it does surprise me a bit, and kind of in a negative way. I'm kind of bummed out, but I'm glad that they have something, to help them through the day. But it's great that, the people are finding it of use right now.
And I think we're in kind of this miracle golden age of graphic novels, in terms of for younger kids. I think for a long time there was this transition period from starting to read to chapter books, which was filled with easy to reads, and those were just not interesting enough for a lot of the kids who were ready for more exciting stories, but not for long chunks of paragraphs of words. So I think there's all these amazing graphic novels now that can really bridge that gap and really get kids excited about reading. And I think when you were talking about reluctant readers, one of the great things about graphic novels is you're learning a different kind of reading too. It's not just words, but it's also visual interpretation, understanding from an expression what's going on in the story, or I think they can get so much more out of it than I think parents even realize.
Yeah, as long as the people creating the content know what's going on, and sometimes I see that that's not the case. And so, I'm not gonna, put down any other books. There's some fantastic graphic novels, and graphics puts out quite a few of those. But yeah, I think that there is I feel like if you read a really strongly put together graphic novel, your mind is actually working very hard to assemble this movie in your mind, and I think the action of doing that is exciting to a lot of young readers, because it's like they're getting to not only read information, but they're also building something. They're playing with Legos in their mind, and I think that's really what they're trying to say, is that they want to do that. They actually want to go and make stuff. They don't want to just hear it. They don't want information just being thrown at them. They would like to take that information and assemble it. And I'm just trying to do my best to give them the Legos and not the instructions, and not the final product, no picture that says this is what you need to make. I want them to just go with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one of the things I love about reading graphic novels with my kids is pausing to be how do you think this person feels in this moment? Which is very much that's what that's what real life is like. Unlike my books where I tell you everything they're feeling at every moment. In a graphic novel, you have to kind of figure it out from the dialogue and the expressions, just like in real life. And I think it's raised some really interesting conversations with my kids, trying to be what's really going on here? What's unspoken? I appreciate that you're making those. And there's so many great graphic novels that you out there.
And I think that's what impresses me about both of you, is the respect you have for your readers, and also the respect you have for the child characters you create within your stories. It warms my heart. But I want to turn it over to you all now. What questions do you have for the authors? Anything? Fan questions? Series questions? Start us off, Matt.
Okay, so you guys both talk about world building, and I wonder if there's just kind of, this is not anything big, but is there any kind of little detail you can share us about the world of your books that didn't make it into the novel that fans and readers would really love?
Don't tell him that's my husband.
I only asked because Kazu had told my son a little bit about something the other night.
That's right.
Yeah, I gave him the backstory of what happens before the next book, and it's something I discarded. Yeah, I ended up discarding it because there's just not enough space. It's actually quite an epic story that this one particular character goes on, and it could be its own book. But I knew that if I just showed this character show up, looking a certain way, they would have assembled the story in their minds. And that would be stronger than if I actually drew it and saw it. I think that it would become a more legendary thing. In the way that like Hans, like for example, like in Star Wars, you kind of don't want to see Han Solo actually do the Kessel run in however many seconds that he does. When you actually see it, you're like, oh well, now it's just a special effects thing, and you're living it, and it's kind of boring. But when he talks about it, it's more exciting.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? So I'm always kind of cognizant about what to keep off of the page. Because that's probably more important than what I put on it.
Yeah, I guess so. What I would say, so it made me think of it because the next book that's coming out in the Wings of Fire series is actually from the point of view of the humans, and there has been a lot of moments in the books where the dragons encounter humans in various different ways. They don't always end with humans getting eaten. And so I've always had in the back of my head, like, what's going on in those humans' lives? Like, what is it like to live literally with like giant flying sharks everywhere? Like, who can eat you at any moment. And so there's a whole scene in book 5 where Sunny interacts with a human, and they're kind of, and my editor was like, it's like reading a foreign film without subtitles. Like, you're, she's like, I have no idea what this human is saying. In the next book, you get to find out, because you get to see it from the human's point of view, and you realize it's a very different conversation for her. Like, the dragon was like, oh yeah, she totally gets me, and then the human's like, yeah, she totally gets me, and they totally don't. Like, they kind of do, but there's a lot of misunderstanding. That was really fun to kind of play with. So there's always been, in the back of my head, like, this, like, human backstory that's happening as well. There's, like, because they have their own stories too, like, in this world, and I'm excited to get to show that, like, how they're, and then I asked my editor if this was okay. I was like, it's kind of a book where, those time travel books where someone goes back in time and they just happen to run into every famous person who was alive then. Like they're sitting next to Sigmund Freud or Ben Franklin or whatever. I was like, it's like that. These humans just happen to run into like every possible dragon they can. And she was like, that's fine. And I was like, yeah, I think that'll be more fun that way. So all of those human dragon encounters we're gonna get to see in a different way, which I'm very excited about.
Like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure with Dragons. Yeah.
Other questions? So I have a question based on that. So will humans get another book, or do they just get one? And how are you, once you introduce that, how do you plan forward from there?
Yeah, it's interesting because, I tried to make it one complete book where you get a full story, although it ended up being more like 4 books in one, because it's like the 3 different humans and then what happens when they all meet each other. It's ridiculously long, this book. But then when my editor read it, she got to the end of it and she was like, oh man, now I want more of these. And I was like, I know, I'm sorry, I can't help ending on a cliffhanger. I'm terrible that way. So I do have ideas, and I also, there's a small part of me that actually wants to steer the books in a like humans and dragons like finally achieving peace direction. But I don't know how long that's going to take or if it's even achievable. But this is like taking a step in that direction from the human perspective at least. Like we've got a few dragons who are like, let's not eat those lovely endangered humans. They're awfully cute. So now we have some humans that are like, maybe not all dragons are completely evil. And so I think we'll get back to the human dragon story somehow at some point. But this one takes place during books 1 through 5. So I think I'd have to do a couple more human books to catch them up to the rest of the timeline. We'll see.
Could you tell us the story about when you first realized you had actually made it as an author?
Does anyone ever feel that way? Because don't we always feel like, I don't know about you, but there's always a point in the middle of the next book that I'm writing where I'm like, well, that's it, I've run out of ideas, this is the bad one, and everyone's going to stop reading my books now. I have that like anxiety every single time. So, I don't know. I guess I don't think of it that way. I don't feel like I'm a super successful author. I feel like I'm a really lucky author. Like, so lucky. I have the best covers, I have the best readers. And I just feel really grateful, like, whenever I meet them, to be like, I can't believe there are people who are interested in what I'm dreaming of dragons doing in my office every night. So,
yeah, I don't know. I didn't really there was no graphic novel job when I started, so it wasn't my intention to make it so much as make the book. I wanted to make something like Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind, and I assumed that would mean that I would have continued my career in animation as a director. So I thought I was going to be like Miyazaki, make movies, and then in my free time I would make a comic book. I just didn't realize that there would be such a need in the field of education. That's what changed everything. It wasn't really an ambition thing. It was that there was so many people asking for this thing, and I was wondering why. It's a comic book. Why do schools need this thing? And then as I explored, I realized, oh my goodness, these kids have very little time on their hands. They could really use a great adventure in a short amount of time, so they can fit in all these activities and all that stuff, and all of it started to make sense. So I decided, okay, well, I'll commit myself to this, and so it wasn't, I guess, the success of graphic novels is not a surprise to me. Partly because I did my research prior to this, and I saw that comics are the biggest thing in Japan, and you're in Europe, and Tintin and Asterix, and these things are just massive, And here we just had a couple of generations of the comics industry that were essentially cratered by poor management, and I figured that if somebody came in here and did it right, it would be the biggest thing in the United States. I mean, that's how Disney started. So it just seemed like the math made sense. So I wasn't really worried about success. I actually was more worried about how success might change me, or how to deal with it. And so I reached out to people like Jeff Kinney, and I've been talking a lot with Dave Pilkey, and people who've been very, very successful, and they're very conscientious about their success, and so I've just been trying to prepare myself for that. But
Can I make a suggestion? Because
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this too, and there's this amazing podcast that's David Tennant interviewing famous people, that he's friends with, and that's his main question. He keeps being like, so isn't it weird being famous? And he's like, how do you deal with it? And they all have really interesting, fascinating answers. I highly recommend it. It's just called David Tennant Talks To, or something like that, David Tennant.
Yeah. So no, I mean, as far as making it, I don't know. I guess it's not a.
I think
It's not about it that much.
Yeah, well, I think the moment that I was probably waiting for, during my early years as an author, was hitting the New York Times bestseller list. And then when that happened, just to go back to the theme of my children keeping me humble, I was like, guess what? Oh my gosh, I'm on the bestseller list. And they're like, okay, Mom, what's for dinner?
Right. Yeah.
I was like, you're taking me out. That's what's happening.
That's awesome. No, actually, if I think about it, it was so prior to making Amulet, I was directing a film for Walt Disney Feature Animation. And so that would make you feel like you probably made it, but that project was being delayed, and I wasn't allowed to work. And if anybody works in the film industry, some people have, you just know it's just you're trying to move a mountain. And I understand, people's schedules are different, and budgets are all over the place and stuff like that. And so I knew that they weren't going to listen to a 22-year-old kid who looked like he was supposed to get coffee for everybody, on this film. So of course mine was going to get shoveled out. And so when I decided to leave animation, and I had saved up something like $10,000, and I decided I'm going to just focus on comics, even though there's no such thing as a graphic novel industry. There was nothing there at the time. I would say basically have to be one of the people to help invent this thing. I just thought, okay, let's do this thing. I'm going to focus on it. I'm not going to look back. I'm going to say no to every opportunity that shows up in my door. And that moment when I was in that tiny little apartment where I was just eating Trader Joe's, frozen things and In-N-Out Burger, which I miss dearly because I don't live in California. It's a really good burger, and I actually took it for granted, by the way, for you who have In-N-Out nearby. Eat that more often than you should. It's pretty good. Being in Washington, we miss it. So that moment when I had made that decision, I was living in this tiny little place. I felt that's when I made it, because I felt like, oh yeah, I'm doing it. I'm doing the thing. This is a story. I'm part of I'm getting to be the legends that I looked up to, because every story started like this, where you had nothing, and you just had this drive and this road in front of you, and I had all the confidence in the world that I'd make it. And so that was the day. And and after that, it was more like management. Like, how do I manage it? And can I manage the pace of it? Like, can I be, sometimes I should slow down my work process because I don't want to be too successful. You know, because like it can also destroy you. I've met some people who became too famous too fast. This is a story that you'll hear in athletics all the time. And if you're an athlete, you're not prepared to handle the responsibilities of wealth, the responsibilities that people load on you. You know, and so I've been doing a ton of research on all that too, and just, you know, so I have no control over the success of my stuff. The world is that, and if that happens, I just want to be ready for it. You know, and I feel like the best athletes in the world are always prepared for that moment. So I wanted to be like that. Yeah. So I look up to like Russell Wilson and LeBron James. These guys, they just knew. You could tell, and I thought that as a comic artist, you could do that too.
Well, it's funny because when I was a kid, I definitely thought being an author is the best way to be famous, because you can, like, everyone will know your name, but nobody will recognize you.
That's totally true. It's like one of the best. You can go to the market. You can just go to the supermarket. It's fine. Yeah.
But now it's harder. Yeah.
It's changing now. Yeah. Just as long as there's not a lot of kids. The adults don't care, or maybe they do care, but they don't know what I look like.
Yeah.
But the kids like get this weird look, and I'm like, you know. I think they found me.
Yeah, this happens to me at my kids' school. There's a couple of kids who see me fairly regularly because I'm there all the time. I volunteer in the library. I run the book fair, and yet every time they see me, they run up and they're like, "Are you the Wings of Fire author?" And I'm like, "Yes, I still am." Since the last time we had this conversation.
So for advice for up and coming authors and things like that, or if somebody has to deal with this stuff, just be a boring parent. It really works. Like, they're like, "Oh wait, he's just a dad," and I'm like, "Yeah, this is me, just a dad." And they're just leave me alone after a while. I did this in the internet when I was just putting webcomics up, and I started getting creepy emails for my comics, and I was like, "Uh-oh." And I started putting on the persona like I was a boring dad in my early 20s. And they left me alone. They just left. They're just like, oh, it's just like a guy that just okay.
I deal with that in two ways. One, by being an actual boring mom, also by not reading any of my emails. I have someone else reads all my emails, and I'm not on Twitter, so I hide from all of that. Yeah, no. So it would just distract me so much from my writing to have any awareness of what people out there I don't.
I think that's fantastic. I think it's an awareness of in self-discipline in that regard. I think is really, really a big deal. It's good.
So on the comic book side of things, who are some of your favorite authors and artists?
For comic book artists, all time, I don't know. Let's see. Nausicaa the Valley of the Wind by Hayao Miyazaki. So Miyazaki, even though he's not a comic artist, he's right up there. Jeff Smith, and Bone. Winsor McKay, Little Nemo in Slumberland. The team that is Hergé, that made Tintin, whoever made Tintin, did a great job. And Osamu Tezuka, creator of Astro Boy and Blackjack. Blackjack is probably my favorite comic, actually, all time. It's the renegade surgeon story. I feel like I have a lot in common with a lot of what Tezuka had to do. Scott McCloud.
Can I jump in? Jen Wang, who wrote The Prince and the Dressmaker. I love that book, and I'm so excited for her new one. I haven't read it yet. Tilly Walden, who wrote On a Sunbeam, which is a thick graphic novel, but it's fascinating. It's like spaceships, and they go and deal with ruins from ancient civilizations, and everyone looks a little different. All these different kinds of women, and it's pretty much all women, which I thought was kind of amazing too. And Ben Hackey, I really like his work. I think he's
they're all, and those artists are all wonderful. Yeah, and they're my peers, and I love them so much. And of course, I can't believe I forgot Charles Schultz, who's actually one of my biggest heroes. Sparky's one of my biggest heroes, absolutely. I know Jeannie Schultz, and she was actually been one, like, I think of her as one of my mentors in a way, and having talked with her and spoken with her, she talked a lot about Sparky and what Sparky would have done. I love the fact that he was involved in so many things outside of comics as well. And so, I don't know, Will Eisner as well. That's somebody else who I think about a lot. Partly because my agent began in comics by being his agent. And that was the first thing she did as a literary agent. Prior to that, she was a lawyer. And she helped Will Eisner actually invent the graphic novel. Wow. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. Go ahead.
First of all, thanks both of you for your time tonight. This is really cool. And Tui for pointing out, shout out to the parents who buy your books. You guys send us on great adventures. So we are absolutely happy to do it. It's our privilege. Tui, to you, you talked a lot earlier about the emotions that you put into your characters. Was that something that you planned on doing early on? Was that kind of organic as it grew? The conversations we have about the emotions that the dragons go through. I mean, he's a teenager now, and Owen is still reading this, and we still have great conversations about the emotional side of it. Did you plan that, or is that part of your writing style? Can you dig into that a little bit?
Sure. Oh, you're gonna make me cry. That makes me incredibly happy to hear. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's both like inevitable with my writing, and something I do intentionally too. But that's what I'm really interested in. I'm so interested in like human psychology and like interactions and how we relate to other people. And I do start each book with like a sort of emotional theme. So like at the top of, or each arc, at the top of my notes for the whole series, like for books 1 through 5, it was, we can't choose our, past, but we can choose what we do next. We can't change our childhood or whatever we came from, but we are still in charge of our own destiny. And that was sort of the theme I was working through with like all different, with like each character had sort of a different take on that, but that was my goal with those. And then 6 through 10 was about the idea of powers, like, or giftedness, sort of, like who has powers, like what do you do with those gifts? Who's in charge of deciding what you do with them? And like, does it give you this responsibility to save the world? And does everyone have a responsibility, even without those powers, to help save the world? And then 11 through 15, I'm trying to dig into empathy versus like resistance to evil. So, because it's something I'm sort of wrestling with right now, the idea of like, I'm so invested in like empathizing with everyone. Like, I think it's really important to try and understand everybody, but every once in a while I'm like, maybe this person, we just need to stop them from doing the bad things. So my characters are dealing with that. Like I don't have a 100% answer yet, but I'm trying to have like the one who's like a little over empathetic, but I love him. Like, I love that he's like that. Versus the one in book 13 who's like, we should just fight everybody. I'm just mad all the time. And I'm like, I feel that too sometimes. So trying to triangulate all of that. I don't usually go in with an answer, but I go in with a lot of questions. And then I just have my characters like think about it a lot and talk about it a lot. So so I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you. I'm hoping that it sparks conversations.
For years, it has for years.
Well, I'll wrap us up. I'm going to give Tui and Kazu an opportunity to give a last thought. Any last thought? But this was wonderful. Thank you so much. So last thoughts. I guess thank you so much to the festival for inviting
So
us.
many thoughts. Gosh.
No one can leave until Kazu thinks of something.
I'm stumped. I don't know. There's a lot of authors here, so I guess one of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately is just pacing myself and pace. Like how to set a pace has been a big thing that I've been thinking about, and so
I'm one of the ones that needs to hear that. Like, I love hearing you say that.
Yeah, because I think I want to put it. Not only do I have to write about that, that means I have to live it. So that means I have to set the pace with the way. Like, I have to hold back on a deadline if I feel that we shouldn't. And I feel like you take these leadership positions from a middle position. Maybe you're not in a leadership position, but you're helping to help control the larger ship from a smaller role. And I kind of feel like as a writer, that's part of my job. Speaking with the Pilkeys, they think about this a lot too, because they're leaders in art at Scholastic. And I wanted
come out
to,
pretty frequently.
yeah, so especially for graphic novels or like genre fiction, where I think people expect it to come out a little bit faster. I think it's a good thing to think about how we should, pace so that we can do a lot of these things that stick around for a while. That would be really nice. So, for the authors out there, just, we'll take care of yourself. I think that's, yeah.